Have you ever met someone where the things that you liked the most about them were the same things that drove you crazy about them? My mother said yes, so I married him. Herod was totally taken by John. Loved to hear John the Baptist preach and teach, but the very subject matter that John proclaimed deeply disturbed Herod. It drove Herod crazy. Now, this wasn't Herod the Great. No, this is one of that Herod's son, Herod Antipas. This was the Herod who had married his brother Herod's second divorced wife. This was a frustrated and torn Herod who was so consumed with the politics of trying to get ahead, but who was mesmerized by John. John, who said to Herod, when you destroy Hebrew burial grounds because you prefer a Greek way of life, when you live with your brother's wife against Hebrew's law, when you secretly lust after your wife's daughter, Salome, you are doing evil. But in any event, Herod threw a huge banquet and as the main attraction, asked his stepdaughter if she would dance. Now, nobody knows the nature of the dance. The opera composer Richard Strauss portrayed her wearing only 7 veils, all of which she took off during the performance. But we do know that according to the evangelist Mark, when Salome finished dancing, the crowd was roused up and mightily pleased. So pleased they were that Herod thought, my party is a success. I have them all in my power now. Drunk with all of the acclaim from his guests, Herod went to his stepdaughter Salome and promised her anything she wanted, even up to half of the kingdom. Half of his kingdom. And it's in that promise we see the depth of Herod's brokenness, the depth of Herod's depravity. So full of himself and his own ambitions, we see self-centeredness filling up the space in his heart where his concern for his people should have been. Half of a kingdom is half of a nation of mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, people wanting a chance and another chance and another chance, people up on dry land, people down buried in caves, people needing help, a half of a nation of babies being born, children needing to be educated, old people needing to die with dignity and faith, food needing to be harvested and provided to those who needed to live. And on and on and on. And you, the king, the wannabe king, the one who is charged with the responsibility of taking care of a nation of people, building their roads, seeing to the welfare of the sick and the elderly, you are the one who is charged with protecting them from attack. You who are charged with actually putting their welfare before your own. You are willing to trade up until half a kingdom because you were turned on, because you saw a young girl dance? The excesses of power have not changed much in 2,000 years. How frightening it is when the leaders of the world put agenda, self-advancement, self-aggrandizement, and whim before the needs of their own people. We are well aware that we are not a monocultural nation like Israel was. We are a polycultural world community within these borders and within this city and right here on this block, who in spite of our various beliefs need to look at the challenges and concerns that we have in common in order to live on this planet. We as humans have arrived at the place where we have not only the power to destroy all human life, we have the power to destroy life as we know it on this planet. We have the power to destroy this planet. God has got to be released from the limitations that each one of our denominations and our cultures and our races put on God so that we can work together for the praise and adoration of God and the salvation of the life that is coming after us. Right across the street, he has a nephew who lives on the East Coast who is a rabbi. And the father and I used to talk about the difference in, just little differences in the way Christianity might be practiced here at Little White Chapel and the way his son practices Judaism in his temple on the East Coast. I told the father once about our rummage sale that got rained out. The only day that year it rained. Our rummage sale got rained out, and we had to haul all that stuff back in the church and have a rummage sale. And we made a profit largely because we sold to each other. But it was the rummage sale we were holding for. So I told him about that. And I said, does anything like that ever happen at the temple? He said, you betcha. The weather on the East Coast is so inclement from day to day that as his son has fundraisers and rummage sales they plan to have outside, they don't know when it's going to rain. They have to haul it all back in to have it on the inside. I said to him, you see that big building across the street? It's filled with classrooms, and we are looking forward to the day when one day it will be filled with children. Is that a promise? Is that a problem in the temple? He said, you betcha. With more and more Jews becoming culturally Jewish rather than religiously Jewish, they are missing the same thing the church is missing. Young families, little ones running up and down the aisle, crying and making that wonderful, sweet perfume, that lovely sound to God. We have a lot in common. And then I said to him, I said, so I've been at Jewish services where the Torah is carried up and down the aisle and everyone touches it. If I went to your son's temple, would I be allowed to touch the Torah, the Word of God? And he said, absolutely. He said, my son's temple is reformed and very welcoming, and you, along with everybody else, would be willing to touch the law of God. And then he turned the tables on me. He said, were I to come into Little White Chapel, would I be allowed to participate in the Lord's feast? And I said, absolutely. At Little White Chapel and in most of the places in our denomination, you would be allowed to come to the table and everyone would bless you and affirm you for taking a place in the eating of the bread and the drinking of the wine. We realize that in both his nephew's temple and in Little White Chapel, hospitality is put before everything. But you and I both know that is not true everywhere else. In many places, politics is practiced instead of hospitality. Whether it is the synagogue or the mosque or the church or our country, whether our leaders are called judges or kings or preachers or presidents, politics and hospitality are uneasy colleagues at best, living with each other in extreme tension. That is because politics have to do with policy making. A point of view must be taken. A perspective must be acted out. Hospitality, as you and I understand it, says, let's make all who come welcome. Politics and hospitality have a tough, and thank you for that, they have a tough time existing together. Politics shapes prevailing senses of justice, doesn't it? And justice is justice for all just for those who are born within these borders? Is justice for all just for those of a certain skin color or a certain sex or a certain sexual orientation or a certain level of physical ability or level of intelligence or amount of wealth or age? There has been a time in this land that we all love, this land that we all love, this land that we all love, where the answer to that question for each of those aforenamed groups was unashamedly yes. Justice is for these people, not those. Change and inclusion for those people has only come when hospitality has stood up to politics. And historically, it has not been the hospitality of the mosque, the temple, or Christ's church. Philosophy, the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence, has long ago offered hospitality, saying that all belong in community. Biology has welcomed all, saying people with different predilections, partialities, and penchants are not born inferior. Sociology and psychology have extended hospitality and welcome, teaching us that those people are not an aberration, not psychologically wounded. Those people are able to function as fully functioning members of society. And even our beloved children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and nieces and nephews are calling out to us to extend hospitality to them in their own schools. While politics refuses to make up its mind about how safe it is willing to have these children be. You see the difference between hospitality and politics. With all of this evidence, the church, Christ's beloved church, our Christ's beloved church, looking back in time, looking back to a time that never really was, is still bringing up the rear, still struggling about who deserves hospitality as a welcome child of God. There are Presbyterian churches that still do not allow women near the pulpit. And before we get too smug, let us remember that our Christian church has only made people open and welcome. Our denomination has not decided as a denomination to welcome and affirm. Where grace is accepted, hospitality is the order of the day. Where grace is not accepted, politics and agendas rule. Herod Antipas sacrificed Herod and thus sacrificed grace to political expediency, to politics. You and I, trying to barter hospitality for ourselves, oh, like me, please like me. Every day we sacrifice pieces of our soul to political expediency, to politics. I can't carry a sign. What if somebody sees me? I can't express my opinion. I don't want to offend my friends. We give up our senses of self looking for hospitality, looking for welcome, looking for grace. We make terrible deals with each other. We as Christ Church in a diverse world don't necessarily have to think the politics of bigger numbers than some nearby church is what we need to do. We perhaps need to think that radical hospitality is our mission. As our regional co-pastor Don Dewey said recently, we have to recognize that we, the church, can no longer be lone rangers. One way is to keep doing what we're doing. Little White Chapel doesn't have the storage space, the leadership expertise, or the city zoning laws to hand out the goods and services that the Burbank Temporary Aid Center distributes every day. BTAC doesn't have direct access to you and me, the ones who bring items for the homeless and nearly homeless to church every Lord's Day as part of our worship. But if you put these two together, this church and the Burbank Temporary Aid Center, that's partnership. That's hospitality reaching across two foundations. Keep doing what you're doing. Little White Chapel doesn't have a straight gay alliance in this building. But in each one of the high schools and junior high schools of Burbank, there are children who are discovering their sexual orientation and realize they have no one to talk to. These young people have parents with no experience about how to deal with what their children are going through, and the parents are talking to teachers, and the teachers are seeking out clergy people for assurance that their child is beloved of God. On their behalf, on your behalf, I find myself as often as I can in hospitals and bedsides, and as a PFLAG member, I find myself at PFLAG meetings talking to and assuring parents. That's partnership born out of hospitality. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep buying Christmas presents for children you don't know, but every year the social worker will bring her list, the Little White Chapel, because you provide. Keep doing what you're doing. That is what God calls us to do. Yes, we keep doing what we're doing, but at the same time, we've got to find ways to be more hospitable. You can do more. Spend some time reading books and thinking about what you believe, and be ready to speak a word of hospitality for God in the midst of politics. Don't be afraid. Be prayed up. Be studied up. Be ready to speak for God. You can do more, either online or in the neighborhood, a group that is trying to make a change for the good of all. Join that group. Find out what they're about. Find out how you can support that group, either online, at a meeting, or through dollars to make a difference. And finally, pray that this church will not ever bow to political expediency. pray that this Little White Chapel will always be a church with an open door, looking for new ways to be hospitable.